All right, crew, welcome to the free training. Today we are going to be talking about the product page conversion formula, and more specifically, how do you actually design or how do you actually optimize a product page that's going to convert? At our agency, Blue Stout, we basically deal with this on almost a daily basis, basically a daily basis, working with clients to help them optimize the overall journey that your customer is taking from the point of first being introduced to that brand all the way to the point of making their first purchase and then making subsequent purchases after that. And your primary sales page, your primary conversion page is always going to be your product page. It's not the only thing you need to optimize, but it's absolutely at the crux or at the core of what you need to be optimizing in order to make sure your store and your purchase funnel is converting and performing as high as it possibly can, right? If you're seeing things like decrease in profitability, if you're seeing things like challenges scaling your paid advertising because your ROAS is too low, all of these things are symptoms and symptomatic of conversion problems and overall performance problems on your number one asset, which is your site. And so what we want to do in today's training is we want to talk very, very, very specifically about the formula that we use when we design product pages to ensure that they are going to be high converting. And the idea here is to give you the very, very specific framework and the very specific questions we ask and the very specific ways that we implement designs so that you can actually then take this and start to optimize or change your specific product pages as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and get things started here. So real quick, just who we are. If you're not familiar with us or you haven't spoken with me in the past, my name is Alan Bird. I'm the founder and CEO of an agency called Blue Stout. We are a Shopify Plus design development agency as well as a Klaviyo email marketing agency. We were one of the very first agencies to actually be asked to join the Shopify Plus network, as well as the Klaviyo email marketing agency network. And our clients range anywhere in size from the Fortune 500. We work with incredibly large businesses all the way down to seven-figure Shark Tank success stories. Recent clients of ours have been the top 100 of the Inc. magazine fastest-growing companies in the U.S. Again, Shark Tank success stories, as well as 30 under 30 Forbes founders, and just a few of the brands that we currently have worked with or have recently worked with, all of whom specifically come to us to help them dial in the way that they are moving customers through their online experience, so they can ultimately increase their conversion rates, average order value, and repeat purchase rates on their store. And the main ways that we do that is by designing and developing high converting e-commerce websites, optimizing existing e-commerce websites, and then also generating additional revenue and increasing the amount of revenue that you're driving from your email marketing efforts. Also, all things we can talk about later, and we'll be doing a few different trainings to talk about different elements of ways you can ramp up all of that. But today specifically, we're going to be talking about product page design and how to convert higher on your product pages. So real quick, something I always like to bring up at the very beginning, because I think this really helps frame the way that you should be thinking about conversion. Most folks tend to think, hey, we've got traffic, we've got a site, and we're sending all this traffic there and it's not converting, or it's not converting as well as it used to, or it's not converting as well as our competition or as well as we think it should. And the reality is your site isn't just this flat thing you throw traffic at and either converts or it doesn't convert. You have to think about this journey that your customer is taking with you, and it's going to have multiple touch points. On average, customers are going to require anywhere from 5 to 15 touch points with you specifically, and your brand specifically, before they're going to feel comfortable buying. And so what you need to do is use that to your advantage. You don't have just this one shot or this one time to convert somebody. It's a journey that your customer is going to be taking with you. And so when we talk about how do you sell customers, you're essentially doing it in two stages. First is emotionally, and the second is logically. And this framework, which we call the emotion plus logic framework, is a framework that should be applied throughout the entire customer journey that you're building on your store, in your email, in your advertising, all of the different assets that you're using to have really robust touch points with your customer base. And same goes for product pages. But before we dive into the product page specifically and how to apply this emotion plus logic framework to product pages, I want to give you guys a bit of an overview in terms of how we think about the purchase funnel as a whole, because this is really important for understanding what you need to do on product pages. So again, you have to think of your site as essentially this process, this journey. We call it the purchase funnel that your customer is walking through. And which means that at every stage of this journey, every section of your site is going to be touching a customer at a different stage of their journey, which means at each of these different stages, there's a different job to be done at each element of the site. For example, somebody very rarely is going to be entering your product page for the very first time, right? Maybe they come from an ad and they go straight to a product page in some cases, but then they're probably going to click around and go back to a home page. So for a first visit, there's very specific areas of the site that need to be optimized in different ways to communicate and tell different parts of your story than what need to be told when somebody is further along the journey with you. So for example, somebody coming through the homepage, it's a first time visitor. The story you're telling there is much more simple, much more high level. You're focusing on the hook. That's going to kind of pull them into the hierarchy of your brand and the hierarchy of your story, and then you're going to start to move them through the rest of it. Somebody that's coming to the product page is somebody who's most likely already seen some of the introduction to the brand. They're coming from maybe from an ad that introduced some elements of the brand. They're coming from an email. They're coming from social. So they've had some introductions. And so when you're looking at what you should do and how you should optimize product pages specifically, you need to understand where they are in the process. So when we look at sites, what you're seeing right here is a map of how we optimize e-commerce sites. We break it down into essentially 5 different sections of the customer journey. And in that journey, we optimize for each of these. So you've got attract, acquire, nurture, convert, and retain. And each one of these need to be optimized at different elements of the site. So for example, if we're looking at attract, this is all about understanding who's the traffic, where's it coming from, and do you have that correct messaging, that correct hook, and that correct branding that's going to give them this aha moment where they're going to go, yes, these are my kind of people. This is the type of brand I want to associate with. I'm going to do some more research, or I'm going to continue looking, or I'm going to continue scrolling, or I'm going to start navigating through different products or collections, right? So you need to understand that at every stage, the impetus and the focus should be on moving them to the next stage, and that requires a different type of messaging. So you first start with attract, then you're going to look at acquire and nurture. So this is understanding that even if you can convert very well on your site, let's say 5%, 95% of those folks are not going to buy, right? Which puts, again, the focus on not necessarily converting at this higher up stage in the funnel, but actually acquiring somebody through email or through social or through SMS, through Facebook Messenger, making sure you've got your pixels firing correctly, getting them to sign up for loyalty programs, getting them to sign up for account creations, lots of different ways that we can acquire what we call pre-purchase acquisition your customers before they're even at a point where they're going to be ready to buy from you. And then we want to nurture them all the way to the point of being ready to buy. And so this is email campaigns, retargeting ads, social engagement, loyalty programs, lots of different things we can do to then nurture somebody to the point where they are going to be ready to actually convert. And then finally, once we get down to convert, then it's about doing 2 things, selling them emotionally and then reducing the friction to purchase. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is once you get them down to the point where you've hit them with the correct messaging so they're interested, you've pre-acquired them, you've nurtured them over time to the point where they're ready to buy, now they're ready to buy. How do you actually convert them on your product pages and turn them into a customer? So that's what we're going to talk about right now. So this is what we call the emotion plus logic framework. And it goes back to the statement I made earlier, which is customers essentially make purchase decisions in 2 stages. The first is emotion. Emotionally, they're making the decision. And you do this all the time, right? You're scrolling through Instagram, or you're walking by a store, or you're browsing online, and you see something that you like or something that you want, and you have this inherent, almost like primal connection with it, and you desire it. Either because it's cool and you want it, and it sort of fits in your lifestyle, or it's a product that you've dreamed of buying, or it could just be because it solves a problem. You've had a problem you've had, and all of a sudden you discovered a product that solves that problem, and that's an emotional inherent connection that just goes, oh, this solves my problem, I want it, right? So when we're designing the site, but more specifically product pages, you need to understand that the very first way a customer is going to make a decision is going to be emotional. And you need to optimize that page to be an emotional catch, right? A hook that's going to pull that emotion in, hook them in, and have them make this almost subconscious primal decision emotionally that they want what you're selling. And the best ways to do that are going to be product imagery, sales copy, lifestyle imagery, product videos, and iconography. And we'll talk about and actually show some examples of how to do that and where you should do that on your site specifically. And then the second part of the formula is logic. And so, and again, going back to thinking about like the last few purchase decisions you've made, you will first discover something. You're going to be emotionally connected to it. You're going to want it, desire it, and then all of a sudden your brain's going to kick in and it's going to say, "Well, you know what? This pair of shoes. You know what? I bought a pair of shoes last month. So I really need a new pair." well, this bag looks pretty cool, but you know what, I'm actually traveling this weekend and I was going to use it this weekend. Will it get here in time? It's like, well, okay, that's a $250 product. I really need to spend $250. It's like, well, I've never bought from this brand before. Like, how can I trust them? Do I know this is actually going to be high quality? If you're a consumable product, the barrier to purchase and the logical barrier to purchase for consumables, like, think of like a protein powder or a supplement or anything like that, is going to be extremely high, especially for a first-time buyer. So once you've gotten over that emotional hurdle and you've connected with them emotionally, then it's your job as a brand to understand all of the logical frameworks that somebody's going to walk through that's either going to push them towards a purchase or push them away from a purchase. Some people are going to use those logic questions to talk themselves into buying something, right? Let's say you're looking at a new pair of shoes, right? And you really want that pair of shoes. You might use your logic to say, well, you know what? I'm actually going to wear these a bunch of times. We've got a couple of weddings we're going to this year, or I'm going to use these for work. So you're going to use that logic framework to actually talk yourself into buying. And there's other people that use the logic framework to actually talk themselves out of buying. So you have to anticipate all of the logic questions somebody is going to ask. And then you need to systematically answer them in a way that's actually going to push them towards a purchase versus pushing them away from a purchase. And so the three things we need to be looking at to help satisfy this logic side of the equation is, first off, what are all the questions that somebody's going to have about either either about the product, the process, or the brand. And what I mean by that is you're going to ask questions. Let's say it's a protein bar, right? You might have questions around what's in the protein bar. What's the nutritional information? What are the ingredients? Where is it manufactured? Maybe you don't want your protein bars made overseas, right? So if there's product, if you're selling clothing or apparel or outdoor gear, right, you're going to have questions around what are all the different functionalities or materials being used in that product, right? So there's going to be all these logical questions that a customer is going to have about the product specifically. And this is where most folks do get this right, although I don't think enough brands go into enough detail about really thinking about all those questions, especially when looking at things like apparel. There's so many questions about apparel. People have had such bad experiences with apparel and sizing and fit and shrinkage and how to take care of it and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of questions that need to get answered. The place that most people tend to miss is process. So people have questions around the process, and the process could be anything from, okay, what happens after I buy this? Like, how do I use it, right? Or what's the process of this getting to me? Let's say I'm buying something as a birthday present for somebody and their birthday is this weekend. Like, is it going to get here in time? What happens if it gets here in time, but he doesn't actually like it? Can I return it? Am I going to get charged for returning it? This is a major purchase. What's the warranty details on this? Is it a lifetime warranty? What happens if something breaks? So anything that's sort of process-related questions is the next element in the logic framework. And then the final one is brand. So if somebody's buying from you for the very first time, never bought anything you've ever done before, there's going to be a lot of questions around who you are and what you stand for as a brand. And so what we always recommend is finding ways to interject elements that are going to bolster your brand appearance on product pages or give some transparency into the brand. And this is going to just develop a better overall emotional connection with the brand, so people are going to trust you more. And it's also going to reduce some of this, what we're calling perceived risk, which we'll talk about in a second. Second piece of logic framework, build trust. Best way to build trust is with things like social proof. And most folks do a good job of this in terms of like integrating things like product reviews, but we highly recommend going beyond that. So beyond just product reviews, do you have like third-party testimonials? Do you have press? Do you have accreditations, right? So if you were a supplement company, are you accredited by the FDA? Are you accredited by other third-party well-known agencies, right? Anything you can do to build trust is also going to help somebody walk through that logic framework, those logical questions they have, and start to side on the side of their emotional decision, which was to buy this. So we want to do everything we can to build trust and not give somebody a reason to say no after they've already emotionally decided they want it. And I'll show you some examples of this in a second. And then finally, remove perceived risk. And this is very similar to the idea behind trust, but we state it separately because it really is an important thing to understand. And it's important because at the end of the day, like, I know you have great product. You know you have great product. I know you have great customer service. You know you have great customer service, but your customer does not, especially if they've never bought from you before. And so we don't say remove risk. We say remove perceived risk, because perceived risk is the risk that your customer is perceiving to have right? So it's the riskiness that they perceive they're going to experience by buying from you, especially if it's a first time purchase. So you need to anticipate what all those questions are around risk, and you need to answer them. And some of the best ways to address things like perceived risk are the exact same things you're going to do to build trust. It could be reviews, it could be third-party testimonials, accreditations. It could have things like warranty policies. It could be things like customer covenants. If you don't have a great warranty policy, a great way to interject some trust or to remove or to interject what we call risk reduction assets would be things like customer covenants. So talking about your promise to the customer. We guarantee that we'll do X, Y, and Z. This is our covenant to you as a customer. So even though you guys might have policies that are very customer centric and very customer friendly, you're probably not doing a good job of marketing those in a way that's going to help reduce the perceived risk on things like product pages. So this is a great example of a way you can take maybe a policy you have that's a great customer service policy and flip it into a marketing asset that can be used to reduce the perceived risk of buying from you. So let's talk about some examples here in a second. But real quick, here would be an example of an outline of what a product page would look like. You'd have your title and imagery, you'd have your product variants, add to cart, you'd have your benefits-driven sales copy, and I'm going to show you an example of what I mean by this in a second. USPs and trust assets. Right after you have the sales copy and right next to or close to your add to cart, what else can we present as USPs? When I say USPs, I mean unique selling propositions. So what are the unique selling propositions of your product or your brand that you need to be reminding customers of right up front to help them make that purchase decision? This can help, it can help boost the emotional side of it, but it can also help reduce the sort of the perceived riskiness or help answer a lot of the logical questions. So we want to keep this as high up the page fold as we can and as close to that decision-making step as possible, which would be the add to cart button, so we can be reminding folks of what those USPs are. And then you want to, from there, start to cascade down and include more information to answer all those barriers, all those questions that we just talked about around product, process, and brand. We want to start incorporating social proof and reviews, brand information and mission, transparency, anything that's going to help to bolster trust or help you give you more information about the brand. And then we want to be littering in inspirational lifestyle photography or video throughout the entire experience so that we can keep that emotional connection and that emotional drive up, even as they're answering questions that might be logical. So as an example, here's an example from one of our clients, Heat for Hair. If you look at the structure of the page where the red arrows are, these are all formulaic based upon what we just talked about. Really high quality product imagery, that's going to boost an emotional connection. Incorporating video into the carousel, that video interaction is going to do a much better job than imagery of boosting an emotional connection. We have reviews up top, so we're immediately addressing some of that social proof and some of that perceived risk right up front, and it's right next to that high price point. You'll notice, $4.99 price point is a very high price point. The higher the price point, the more perceived risk, right? And the larger the barrier to purchase is going to be for your product. And so incorporating elements as close as you can to those high price point elements can be helpful. Sales copy. A lot of people miss this and they incorporate like a product description. They don't incorporate product sales copy. There's a place for sales copy and there's a place for product information, and they need to be completely separate. And I'm going to show you guys some examples of how to do that. The idea here is you want to keep your product sales copy short and sweet. 1 to max 3 sentences that's going to sell somebody on the product. And then if you need more descriptive information that talks about what the product does or helps answer those questions that we just talked about, then you can incorporate that in different areas of the site. We'll talk about it in a second. Go down, look at near the add to cart. We're actually incorporating iconography down there that's going to help explain and address some of the perceived risk issues. We ship worldwide. That's a benefit. That's a massive benefit. And for this customer base, a lot of their customers are worldwide, and so they need to understand immediately that they're going to get their product, right? That's an option for them to buy from Heat for Hair. And then happiness guarantee. In this particular space, in sort of the wigs and hair extension space, there's a lot of really bad product. And so this is an introduction. You click on that, it opens up their happiness guarantee. It opens up what they also call their customer covenant. And it talks about their quality process. It talks about the product. It talks about what they do if the product is poor quality. And so it's a way to help get ahead of that perceived risk and put it right here so customers can dive in immediately to understand why they should feel really comfortable buying from this brand. And again, we're then, as you scroll down the page, you'll see there's more video content to help do 2 things. This is answering questions about how to use the product, but it's also helping to boost that emotional connection. If you look at that image in the bottom right, And then we're also starting to separate out all the really critical questions people have into expandable fields. So length chart, what's the length, what's the size I need to buy? A critical question to buy. So we're going to break that out. Delivery returns, this is a process question. So we talk about product, process, and brand. Delivery and returns is a process question, like when is it going to get here? If I'm going to a wedding next weekend, is it going to get here in time, right? So it helps you answer all those questions as a customer. Another example, one of our brands, Taft. These guys do an excellent job of incorporating really high quality imagery in mobile. So I'm going to show you guys a few mobile examples because this is where most brands tend to get this wrong. But if you scroll through the Taft product page on mobile, you'll notice, A, it's super easy to use. We're reminding folks of things like free shipping and returns in the US directly below the add to cart. We've got some really simple sales copy right below the add to cart. And then as you scroll, you get up and close to look at the quality of the product. And so this does two things. A, it boosts that emotional connection because you see how cool the products are. And B, visually, you're answering questions the customer is going to have about things like product quality or sizing or fit or materials. You see the bottom of the shoe is built with a Vibram sole. So you can use, not everything has to be answered with text. It can be answered with visuals as well as iconography. Another one of our clients, Oros, you'll notice here, if you look where the red arrow is, we're immediately answering one of the biggest questions customers always have is around sizing. So you can see John here is 6'1" and wears a size large. So you can instantaneously understand, okay, well, this model is wearing a large, I'm 6'1" or I'm 6'2" or I'm 6 foot, so it sounds like a large is probably the right size for me. So finding and anticipating what those questions are for your customer or mining your customer service logs and all the communication you're getting from customers, whether it be complaints or poor reviews, and determining what are those questions you need to answer on your product page. And that's exactly what we did here for Oros. This was a major question around sizing they kept getting, so we put it right up front in their face, right before they added to cart. Client Moonglow. So a few things to point out that these guys do incredibly well. And what these guys do is they have layered in multiple different elements throughout the scrolling experience on a product page. So first up top, we have incentives to improve the average order value. So this says if you're 2 items away from your free gift, right? And so this is an incentive to say, oh, okay, I need to add 2 more items to my cart and I get a free gift, right? We're layering the selling propositions in that first screen on mobile directly below the imagery. So you can see it talks about the types of crystals, it's hand finished, there's over 15,000 reviews of these products. So we're going to be incorporating value propositions, but also reducing risk with social proof right here directly below the product imagery, so we know people are going to see it as they start to scroll. Over on the right-hand side, we're talking about when something is going to get delivered, so we're answering process questions. And then we're also going to be adding expandable fields on mobile. So right above that, you'll see there's a description field. The Trimar Charm necklace is a silver triple moon pendant, so it's talking about in sales copy what this is and why you should love it. And then below that, we're gonna be breaking out all the questions that people have into expandable fields. And then if you look at the third screen, as people continue to scroll, we're just gonna hit them over the head of lifestyle imagery and sales copy to continue to stoke that emotional desire and fire for the product. Now, another one of our brands, exact same thing, very similar to what we did for Moonglow. If you look over on the left-hand side, we actually added a piece of sales copy up above the title. This is guaranteed to keep you warm. So the idea here is we want people to see some of this really quick, witty sales copy right before they even start to scroll through the product. Over on the right-hand side, you're going to see that we have sales copy, and then we also have expandable fields, and we've used iconography down here to really highlight the unique selling propositions of this brand. So 4-way stretch, wrinkle-free, organic cotton, water repellent, all the things that are the most important features of the product have been built into iconography, so it's really easy to consume on mobile. So guys, hope that was really helpful. Go back and watch this again if you have any questions. I know that was a ton to fit in. More importantly though, if you guys have any questions on what we talked about today, or you have questions about how you should apply this to your brand. If you are a 7 or 8 figure e-commerce brand and you think you can be converting more through your site or converting more through your product pages, then sign up for a free strategy call with myself and my team. You can go to bluestout.com/strategy, or you can just click the button that's going to be presented on this page here directly below this video, and you can pick a time on our calendar fill out a couple questions just so that way we're able to actually review your site and prep before we speak. And then we'll get on the phone and we'll break down what you're doing right now. We'll take a look at your product pages and we'll give you advice on exactly what to change in order to improve your conversion rates. So I hope you guys found this helpful. And if you have any questions, just go to bluestout.com/strategy and sign up for a call.